Okay, so to start the hour, I just had you identify these 6 functions. The first one was number 1, which is the V shape there, the red one, and that was the absolute value of x. And its domain, I had you tell me what the domain was, negative infinity to positive infinity. All right, number 2 was the parabola y equals x squared. And then the domain for that thing is negative infinity to positive infinity. It goes forever in both directions. Number 3 is the square root. Notice the square root has a start, just a hard stop right there at 0, 0. It doesn't go here because you can't put in negative 1 into a square root. So it's y equals the square root of x, and it does not go forever. It goes from 0 to infinity. Number 4 was the red one down here, which is 1 over x function. And if you just look at its equation, you could see x can't be 0. Look at that. See how you can't let x be 0? So you should have said it goes from negative infinity, and then it can't be 0, though. And then it starts again at 0, but it can't be 0, parentheses on the 0, to infinity. Raise your hand if you had number 4 right. All right, that's going to be the hardest one. Look at it. This is how you say everything but 0. You need to be able to do that on your next test. All right, next up is number 5. Pay attention, please. Some of you aren't looking at the board. Number 5 is the x to the third one, like that. And that one goes forever in both directions, left and right. And so it's negative infinity to infinity. And last but not least is number 6, which is the y equals x function. This one that just runs like that, just goes forever at like a 45-degree angle. Y equals x. And when I said it goes forever, you know, that kind of implies it's negative infinity to infinity. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the range of each of these. I'm going to go off to the side. You guys could just erase your answers, but I'm going to go off to this side and write the answers for the range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make the range, please, for all of these functions. That's what your next test, which is coming in about a week, has a ton of, is domain and range. So we really got to get this down. The range is the up and down. And the mistake that people make on range is that they, by accident, sometimes they put negative infinity like last. It's got to be the smaller on the left. So if you have 2 numbers in parentheses like this, you got to have your smaller number here, and your bigger number is on the right. So just make sure in all of your answers, you don't get fooled into thinking that by accident, you don't put the small number first. That's going to happen a lot. Okay, so the range for number 1 is it goes forever in both directions. True or false? For number 1, the V shape, does it go forever in both directions? Now we're talking down and up. Does the red one have a lowest spot that it ever goes? Yeah, it has the lowest spot that it ever goes. So does it actually go forever up and down? No, it does not. It goes, the lowest it ever goes is 0. The highest it goes is infinity. There is your range for number 1. Now that you know that's how you do range, look at number 2 and get its range. Isn't 2 pretty much the same thing? The lowest it goes is 0. Addie, what'd you have for number 2?
0 to infinity.
Yep. Bracket on the 0. Can it touch? Yes, it can. Okay, number 3. Let's go with Brady. What's the lowest that one goes?
0.
So again, 0 to infinity? Okay, you are correct. How about number 4's range? What's the lowest it goes? You might think it's 0 because it doesn't want to touch 0, but no, it actually goes all the way down to negative infinity. So you should start with that. And tons of people don't have negative infinity first. You're wrong. It's the smallest number that there can be. And so it has to be first. Negative infinity. Then remember, this is the one where it doesn't touch 0. So that's the same thing. This is how you say everything but 0. That's how you write everything but 0. That's gonna for sure come up on your test. Not saying that the range will be that, but you're gonna have to know how to write everything but one number. Okay, number 5. When it comes to up and down, number 5 goes forever down and forever up, and it works all the way along the way, so it goes from negative infinity to infinity. And number 6, how low does that one go? It also goes negative infinity. To the highest it goes, infinity, and it never stops working. No doubt, if you just look at those answers, the only one that's really difficult is that one. And that's just saying everything but 0. Got to get used to that one. Okay, now here is our, the main thing that you're supposed to know. You were supposed to know those last year. That was higher algebra. You've had that before. So here's the new thing for this year. If I give you a square root of x squared minus 3x minus 4, you're supposed to be able to tell me the domain of that. And yet you don't have a clue what it looks like. And I don't expect you to. I don't expect you to be able to graph that. So how do you do it when you don't know what the graph looks like? How do you do domain and range then? All right, well, first of all, listen to this one. You can't do range unless you can see the graph. So therefore, I would never ask you this one's range, because I don't think you guys could graph this. I'm not saying forever, if you had an hour, you could graph it, sure. Because you could just make a million XY points on a chart and you'd eventually figure out what it looks like. But it would be really hard to figure out what this looks like. And so we wouldn't ask you range of this. We would ask you range of any of these, because you know what they look like. You can graph them. If you can graph them, you can get their range. So we would not ask you range for this, but we would ask you domain. And I taught you yesterday that you're supposed to take what's underneath here and set it greater or equal to 0. So everybody please write this. X squared minus 3x minus 4 greater or equal to 0. Put that on your iPad. And if you can't solve it, then you've already forgot what we had on the last test, because we had the same exact problem on the last test. So the pre-calc part is knowing to pull that out and set it greater or equal to 0. The algebra part is, can you solve this now? So pre-calc's not hard. It's just knowing this part has to stay positive, which is greater or equal to 0. How many of you knew that it was factoring? Raise your hand if you knew this was factoring. Okay, awesome. And there's still a few holdouts that have not mastered factoring. You've got to know this. It's got to be like the back of your hand. That's negative. So then there's a positive and a negative. And then how do you make a 4? There's still a few holdouts that think we multiply to this number. No, you don't. You multiply to that number. So it's either 2 and 2. And pretty quick you'll realize, well, that can't make a 3. So then it can't be the 2 and the 2. It's got to be the 4 and the 1. And when you put a 4 and a 1 here, that can make a 3, but it makes negative 4x and positive 1x. Does that make what I want? Look at close. Does that make what I want? Yes, it does. Because that makes negative 3x. And there we go, it's factored. Can I just be done? No. Your last test, you had to make a number line for all of them. So you got a number line like this, and then you go, the two important numbers were negative 1 and 4. Circling them. Do I fill in the circles? George, do I fill in these circles?
Yes.
Because?
Because it's greater than or equal to.
Yes, the or equal to makes you fill it in. Very good. And then I just have to test a spot. Tully, how do I test a spot?
Pick a number,
Okay, I like 0. Now what?
plug it in for x.
Plug it in for x. 0 goes here, 0 goes here. What do I get here and here? You can do it, Tully. 0 minus 4?
Negative 4 and 1.
Negative 4 and 1. And now when you put those together, what is negative 4 times 1?
Negative 4.
Is that bigger than or equal to 0? Is negative 4 bigger than 0?
No,
Is it less? Is it equal 0?
no.
So it's out. So that's how you test a region. And now we can figure it probably works in the other spots. Kai, can you tell me how to test 5, please?
5 minus 4 and 5 plus 4.
Okay, so I'm putting in the 5 right here. 5 minus 4, 5 plus 1. 5 more 4 is 1. 5 plus 1 is 6. So does that work, Kai?
Yeah.
Yeah, because 1 times 6 is 6. 6 is bigger than 0. It worked. Yay, it worked there. And you should check the last spot too. But it will work. And there we go. So, man, that was a lot of work. And it started with just this. And you had to grab this, set it greater or equal to 0, and then it turned into one of your last tests kind of problems. Do you get how this unit is related to the last unit? It's just, you got to know how to make the problem. We gave you these problems on the last test. On this test, you basically just have to make the problem. All right. Here's another one. 1 over x squared minus 7x minus 8. But y equals that. Now, do I have to worry about negative square roots on this problem? No, there isn't even any square roots. Do I have to worry about the bottom becoming 0? Yeah, that's the whole point. Is if the bottom could become 0, then 1 over 0 wouldn't exist. So, what's my favorite saying again, Mr. Nunez?
If you can factor it, you should.
Exactly. Everybody factor that. And then you'll have 1 over this factored thing. I'm curious, how many of you already had it factored? All right, nice job. You're getting used to this then. Whenever you see something going to be factored, you just factor it. You just know it's going to have to happen. Alex, tell me how to do the signs on this one. Is it plus plus? Is it minus minus? Is it plus minus?
Minus plus.
How do you know?
Because it's a negative.
Where? Any negative? It's because the last one's negative. Okay. See, sometimes there's a negative here, but a positive there. So you can't just say because there's a negative. It's because the last one's negative. Then it's a plus and a minus. If they were a minus and then a plus, like minus 7x plus 9 or something like that, then there's still a minus. But to get a positive, you need 2 negatives. All right, so anyway, we know it's a plus minus. All right, Mason, can you tell me what this factors to?
8 and 1.
Okay, and now I got to check if I have them in the right spot. This is 8x. This is minus 1x. Oh, what does that mean? That means change the what? The signs. Good. So then I go, this becomes minus, and this becomes plus. And I know some of you are like, you could have changed the numbers. True, but I'm telling you, this system works even when there's a number in the front. When there's a number in front like 2x minus 8, you know? Okay, that kind of problem, you want to change the signs, not the numbers. I know either one would have worked here, but changing the signs works always. So it's better. Anytime you have a trick or a rule that only works sometimes, it kind of sucks because then sometimes you use it, it's not going to work. So you want to make the sign switch so that now you have negative 7x, the opposite of what we had. So yay, it's working. And now, all you did so far was factor. You learned that in higher algebra. So what's the pre-calc part? It's knowing that that can't be 0. And this can't be 0. Again, yesterday was the first time in your life where you wrote equations that had not equals in them and had to solve them. Would you please solve these two little not equal equations and then put it on a number line? Because once again, your answer isn't just 2 things. It's a range of things. screwed up. It's a minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. There's my two things it can't be, but range is, the question that you're answering for range is, what are all of the things that it can be for y? And these are the things that it can't be. You can't let x be 8, and you can't let x be -1. And I just said range, and I apologize, I should mean domain. Okay, so I'm doing my domain, and I gotta put it on this number line. Why? Because I'm trying to find the things that work. All I have right now is the things that don't work. It can't be -1 and it can't be 8. But the cool part is, you don't have to even test this. Everything else works. So it's everything in here and everything out there and everything out there. Yes?
You said it can't be 0, but in between.
Wait. What can't be 0?
1, you can't have 1 over 0.
Right, so wait. If I put in a 0 here, though, will there be a 0 on the bottom? No. See how 0 actually works in this case? It's that when you put in something, you can't make it be 0. So like -1, do you get how this becomes 0 and then the whole thing becomes 0?
Yeah.
So -1 doesn't work and 8 also doesn't work. So those are my two key things right there.
Okay.
Fair question. Yes, you need somebody.
Arrow.
Yep, there we go.
So I need myself for sure.
All right, so here's our final answer, and this is a range of things that, actually I said range again. It's the domain, which in the real world, like we often say, it's a range of values, but it's the domain. So here's our domain. What if the keys, or the top of the test says, all answers must be in interval notation? I'm not gonna make you do this every time. Please write this as 3 intervals. See if you remember that, because if you leave this as a number line, then I have to take off 5%. Sucks. It's because you forgot to write it with intervals. And actually, if you forgot it on the whole test, you'd have to retake the test. Because I can't just take off 5% once. I gotta keep on marking you down for forgetting to do intervals. Then it would just slaughter your grade. All right. Sophia, would you please tell me the 3 little intervals?
Negative affinity to -1, parentheses, u -1 to 8, parentheses, u 8 to infinity, parentheses.
That is correct. How come we don't use brackets? Because it can't touch 8. As soon as it touches 8, you get a 0 on the bottom. The whole thing dies. All right. Yes?
We have to write the U.
Yes. If you have multiple intervals, that means union. And yeah, you lose 5% if you forgot it. All right. So that's just notation. You know, like so are periods in a sentence. Like you gotta know that you're supposed to put a period at the end. Can't leave off the period. You're gonna lose a little something. All right. So now I get to preview the next thing. The next level thing. Next level thing is where we have both a square root and something on the bottom, how do you do the domain of that? Okay, it's simple. You do it one step at a time. One thing at a time. I'm gonna on purpose make a mistake here and tell you what the kid is thinking. Okay, I remember that square roots aren't supposed to be negative, so I'm gonna write square root of x minus 3 has to be greater or equal to 0. It's subtle, but there's just one little thing wrong there. What did I do wrong? See how subtle it is? No square root. You're just doing x minus 3 is greater or equal to 0. No square root. Because otherwise you're going to square both sides. It's going to change things. Okay, it's just what's under the root. See, this is what's under the root. That needs to be greater or equal to 0. All right, so no square root. Okay, next thing is this means x not equal to 1. A lot of kids say x equals 1 is the answer. No, x not equal to 1 and x not equal to 8. And now most kids know, okay, so I just got to add 3 to both sides so that x is greater or equal to 3. But then they don't know how to put it all together. Like they got this thing, which is true, and they got this thing, which is true, and I got this thing, which is true. So how do you put it all together? With a number line. Let's just see if you can do it. Now that I tell you, the answer just has to go on a number line. Try to figure out where your final answer is with those 3 numbers, 1 and 3 and 8 being the key 3 numbers. And you're looking for things that are not 1, not 8, and bigger or equal to 3. There's not many numbers that are left. Put it this way, there's a lot of numbers that won't work. I'll pause for a second while you try to put those 3 things on a number line. All right, 1, 3, 8. What do I know about 1? What does it say about 1? Can't be 1. Just an empty spot. That's all you got to do to graph that. Can't be 1. What does that mean? Can't be 8. Empty spot. What does this mean? It can be 3 or bigger than 3, and now the debate will come because some kids will say, I should darken in the 8 now because it's bigger than 3, so shouldn't it be darkened in? No, because, just think about it. If you just ask yourself about the 8, just ask yourself about the 8. Can I put 8 into this thing? No, because as soon as I put the 8 in, the bottom will become 0. The whole thing just is toast. You try to put it in a calculator, it's an error because you can't have an 8 in this, and the bottom would turn into 0. Dividing by 0 doesn't work. So, on the debate of 8 is bigger than 3, but it can't be 8, the can't be 8 wins. The final answer is that. The interval would be brackets. I couldn't say brackets for a second. Brackets 3 to 8, union 8 to infinity. Now, I just gave you the preview of the hardest kind of question that you have on your test. That was it. And the test isn't for a week. Why? Well, you got Friday off, and we'd probably test you on Monday, but tests on Monday usually don't go so good because not many people study on Sunday night, and then all of a sudden, boom, you sit down on Monday and they fail the test. So give you an extra review day Monday, test is Tuesday. So I officially teach you that tomorrow, but I just want to give you a preview because I know some of you in here are doing really well. So, all right, so back to McNormalville. If I just give you this, you're supposed to be able to say, what's its domain? Some kid's gonna say x can't be 8. That's close. The domain is what can it be? Everything but 8, like that. Do you get the difference? This is a list of what it can be. That's what you're supposed to give. The domain is what you can safely put in the function. All right. How about the domain of this? Well, you could do it two ways. You could go, oh, I know what that square root looks like, and it's been moved to the right. Boom, I've got my little graph of it. You could give me the domain from looking at that graph. Or you could say x minus 9 needs to be greater or equal to 0. So x is greater or equal to 9. Who's smarter, the kid that did it with the graph or the kid that did it with algebra? Either one, I don't care. Either way, the answer is 9 or bigger. Make sense? That's domain. How about the range? That you have to have the graph. I don't have an algebra way to do range. You got to be able to sketch the graph. So we'll give you one that you can sketch the graph of, like this. What's the range on this? Oh, it's so often kids say 9 to infinity. Wrong. What's the lowest this one goes? Hint, it's not 9. Yes? You know what it is? Trent?
8 looks like 0.
It's 0, you are correct. It is right on the axis, so that's 0 to infinity. And it touches 0. That's the range of this thing. It's really tempting to say the 9, but this spot is really 9 comma 0, and the range is about the y's, so it's 0 to infinity for the range. All right, could I ask you for the domain of something that has a squared in it? Absolutely. And if you can factor it, you should. You get this thing factored, and you get it set equal to 0. I'm going to factor it super fast. Don't forget greater or equal to 0. That's the pain in the butt kind. Takes a long time to do them. You got to test intervals. You got a number line. You got to write an interval notation at the end. That's the hardest of the normal kind. All right, there. You've learned everything, including a preview of the future. The future kind where you have to do square roots and things that are factored on the bottom. That kind is the hardest kind. You just do them separately though. You go, oh, so this part has to say greater or equal to 0. And this part can't be 4, can't be 10. And you put that, and that all on the same number line. All right. Don't expect you to be awesome at this kind yet. These are hard. But I wanted to preview it today. I really believe that your subconscious then will work on it. Like now that you know how that works, then your brain actually starts processing that. And like through the process of going to sleep at night and your thoughts get rearranged and organized at night. That's one of the reasons if you short yourself on sleep, it really hurts in school. Because that's when your brain organizes things and puts things away. So anyway, then during that process, I think some of you guys will get this. And then when I teach it tomorrow, it'll go so much better. All right, I want to also hand the test back today. It's for anybody that wants to do corrections and stuff. Thank you. And that's all I have for today.